Welcome back, Breaking Bad family. We need to talk about Ozymandias. You know the one. The episode that holds a perfect 10/10 rating on IMDb. The episode where our hearts were collectively ripped out of our chests and left to bake in the New Mexico sun. We all remember the sound of that gunshot. It's the moment the show stopped being a crime drama and became a Greek tragedy. Hank Schrader, the man who started as a borderline caricature of a jock cop and evolved into the moral compass of the series, staring down the barrel of Jack Welker's gun. He knew it. We knew it. You're the smartest guy I ever met, but you're too stupid to see. He made up his mind 10 minutes ago. Bang. Silence. But what if the bullet never left the chamber? Today, we are diving into one of the most insane, mind-blowing what-if scenarios in television history. We are rewriting the destiny of ASAC Schrader. We are taking that legendary scene in the Tohajile Reservation and twisting the knife in a different direction. Grab your rocks, because things are about to get heavy. Let's rewind to that dusty, sun-bleached standoff. Jack Welker has the gun pointed at Hank. Walt is begging, pleading, offering up the location of $80 million. In our timeline, Jack pulls the trigger because, well, he's a psychopath and Hank is DEA. But let's play with the variables. Let's inject a little bit of logic into Jack's chaos. In this alternate reality, when Walt screams $80 million, Jack doesn't just see dollar signs. He sees a tactical advantage. He looks at Hank. He looks at the vast, empty desert. He realizes that killing a high-ranking assistant special agent in charge brings down the kind of heat that melts neo-Nazis into puddles. The FBI, the DEA, Homeland Security, they don't stop looking for a cop killer. But a corrupt cop? A cop who took a bribe? That's a different story. Jack lowers the gun, just an inch. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a box cutter. He smiles that terrifying, toothy smile and says, $80 million buys a lot of silence, Walter. He strikes a deal. Not a deal for mercy, but a deal for leverage. They take the money, all 7 barrels, leaving Walt with nothing, not even a sympathy barrel. And they give Hank an ultimatum that freezes his blood colder than liquid nitrogen. You walk away, Jack says, leaning in close, and you forget this happened. You say a word, and we pay a visit to the Purple House. We pay a visit to the widow Schrader. It's the ultimate checkmate. Hank Schrader, the man of law, is now bound by the same silence that protected Heisenberg. Now, before we get into the psychological fallout, here is a crazy behind-the-scenes fact that makes this what-if even more ironic. Did you know that Dean Norris, the genius actor behind Hank, actually asked showrunner Vince Gilligan to kill him off earlier? Yeah, it's true. Before the final season was split into 2 parts, Dean wanted to go film a pilot for a show called Under the Dome. He literally called Vince and said, "Hey, can I die in the first 8 episodes?" Vince, in his infinite wisdom, looked at him and basically said, "No way. We need you for the end." Can you imagine if we lost Hank in Season 5A? We would have missed the garage confrontation. We would have missed Tread Lightly. It would have been a disaster. But in our new timeline, Dean Norris is stuck in the desert, alive, but wishing he wasn't. Back to the story. The Nazis drive off, dust kicking up into the atmosphere, dragging Jesse Pinkman with them to his slavery. Walt is left handcuffed, face in the dirt. And Hank is alive. But Stephen Gomez is still dead. That's a fixed point in time we can't change. The tragedy is still there. Hank has to stand up, his ears ringing, and look at the body of his partner, his best friend. The guilt would be absolutely crushing. This is where the character arc shifts from heroic martyr to vengeful ghost. Picture the drive back. In the original series, Walt rolls a barrel through the desert. In this version, Hank and Walt are stranded together until they can get the SUV working. The silence in that car would be deafening. It's not the angry silence of the garage. It's the hollow silence of defeat. Walt thinks he's bought Hank's life with his money. He thinks he's still in control. He turns to Hank, maybe tries to spin some lie about how they can fix this. And Hank? Hank doesn't punch him. He doesn't read him his rights. He just stares out the window at the passing mesa, his eyes dead. He realizes the badge in his pocket is just a piece of metal now. He can't call it in. If he calls it in, Marie dies. If he calls it in, he has to explain why he was out there without backup, why Gomi is dead, and where the money went. The Nazis have the confession tape. They have the money. Hank has nothing. This brings us to the most fascinating psychological twist. Rogue Hank. We've seen Heisenberg break bad. Now we see ASAC Schrader break. When they get back to Albuquerque, Hank doesn't go to the DEA. He goes home. He walks into that house, and for the first time, the purple decor doesn't look quirky. It looks like a target. Marie asks him where he's been, why he's covered in dirt. He can't tell her. He lies to his wife, the one thing he hated Walt for doing. The hypocrisy starts to eat him alive from the inside out. The confession video Walt made, the one where he frames Hank as the mastermind, is still out there. Now, it's not just a threat. It's a narrative that Hank is accidentally supporting by not turning Walt in. The public doesn't know, but the tension is building. Hank starts drinking heavily. Not the fun Schrader brow brewing, but dark, solitary drinking in the garage, staring at his mineral collection, realizing he was chasing the wrong rocks. He was chasing glory, and it got his partner killed. Here is where the story goes off the rails in the most epic way possible. Hank realizes the law cannot help him. The law is what restricts him. To catch a monster like Jack Welker and to finally crush Walter White, he has to step outside the legal framework. He starts using the skills he learned chasing Heisenberg to become a shadow. He starts tracking the blue meth distribution, not to make an arrest, but to find the compound. Remember the theory fans had about Hank committing suicide? It was dark, but this is darker. This is a suicide mission where he is still walking around. He becomes obsessed. He creates his own board of evidence in a storage locker, hidden from Marie. He stops shaving. He looks like the Unabomber. The clean-cut DEA agent is gone. Meanwhile, Walt thinks he's safe. He thinks the threat to Marie has neutralized Hank. Walt goes into the granite state mode. Maybe he doesn't leave immediately. He tries to manage the situation. He visits Skylar. He tries to play the family man again, thinking the nightmare is over. But he doesn't realize he's created a new predator. Let's throw in a massive what-if curveball here. What if Hank reaches out to the only other person who hates Walt as much as he does? No, not Jesse. Jesse is a slave right now. I'm talking about Skylar. Imagine the scene. Hank, broken and terrifying, cornering Skylar in the car wash. "I know you know," he whispers. Skylar is terrified, thinking he's going to arrest her. But he doesn't. He asks for help. He needs to know where the money went. He needs to know anything that can lead him to Jack. It's a twisted alliance. Skylar, who is terrified of the Nazis coming back, might see Hank as her only protector, since Walt is powerless without his cash. This leads to a complete subversion of the show's dynamic. Usually it's Walt versus Hank, with Skylar in the middle. Now, it's Hank and Skylar in a secret Cold War against the neo-Nazis, with Walt helplessly trying to regain control. There's a legendary Easter egg in the show, the color theory. Hank is always associated with orange, warning, danger, and Marie with purple, royalty, protection, self-delusion. In this new timeline, Hank's wardrobe shifts. He starts wearing black. He adopts the Heisenberg color palette. He is absorbing the darkness. It's symbolic of his descent. He is becoming the bad guy to destroy the bad guy. And let's not forget the DEA. They are wondering where Gomez is. Hank has to fake reports. He has to forge signatures. He is committing felonies every single day to cover up the death of his partner until he can get revenge. The stress would be insane. Can you imagine the scene where his boss, Merkert, if he was still there, or his new superior asks, "Hey, have you heard from Gomi?" And Hank has to look him in the eye and lie? It's Oscar-worthy drama waiting to happen. This build-up sets the stage for a confrontation that is totally different from Ozymandias. In the original, Hank accepts his fate with dignity. In this version, he rejects fate with rage. He is arming up. He's buying illegal weapons because he can't use his service issue. He is tracking the Nazis to that clubhouse. But here is the kicker, the detail that makes this theory truly heartbreaking. In the canon, Hank died a hero. He died a man of the law. In this timeline, by surviving, he slowly loses the very thing that made him Hank. He loses his moral high ground. He becomes just another player in the game. Is survival worth it? If you lose your soul, that is the question we are posing. Now, pause for a second. Think about the memes. Sex gifts, Hank. Minerals, Hank. Those light-hearted moments are gone. The internet would have lost its mind seeing Dark Hank. The Reddit threads would be exploding with theories about Heisen Hank. The community engagement during the airing of these episodes would have been unparalleled. We would be analyzing every shadow, every line of dialogue, looking for the moment Hank truly snaps. As we move toward the climax of this alternate reality, we have to ask, what happens when Hank finds out Jesse is alive? Does he try to save him? Or does he see Jesse as just another loose end? Remember, Hank didn't care much about Jesse's life in Rabid Dog. "Pinkman getting killed is a benefit to us," he said. That was cold Hank. Rogue Hank might be even worse. Or maybe Jesse is his redemption. We are standing on the precipice of a totally new finale. The chessboard has been flipped. Walt is neutralized, broke, and scared. The Nazis are confident and rich, and Hank is the wild card, hiding in the bushes with a snub-nosed .38 and nothing left to lose. The stage is set, the players are in position, and the blue meth is still flowing. So, Hank is alive, but he's a ghost of the man he used to be. The Albuquerque sun still shines, but for ASAC Schrader, The world has turned into a cold, dark place. We left off with Hank becoming a rogue operator, a man trapped between his badge and his blood. But now, we need to talk about the inevitable collision course. Because in the world of Breaking Bad, actions always have consequences, and the bill always comes due. This is the culmination of our what-if epic, and trust me, it's going to be legendary. If Hank survives Tohaji Ali, the biggest what-if variable isn't just his survival. It's the fate of the Granite State. In the original timeline, Walt flees to New Hampshire, leaving a trail of destruction behind him. But with a living, breathing, and vengeful Hank Schrader on the loose, Walt doesn't have the luxury of time. He's cornered. He's broke. And most importantly, he's terrified, not of the DEA, but of what Hank has become. There's a hidden irony here that is just pure genius. The man who spent years trying to stay out of Hank's sight is now the only person who can see how far Hank has fallen. Let's talk about a scene that would have been absolutely iconic. Picture Walt hiding out in a cheap motel, hearing a knock on the door. He expects the police. He expects Jack's crew. Instead, he opens the door to find Hank. No handcuffs, no Miranda rights. Just Hank with a look in his eyes that Walt has never seen before. Hank walks in, sits down, and says, "We're going to kill them, Walt. All of them." This is the ultimate mind-blowing moment. The hero and the villain forced into a temporary, poisonous alliance to take down a common enemy. Jack Welker's gang. Why would they team up? It's simple. Hank wants justice for Gomi and his own stolen life. Walt wants his money back and his legacy secured for Flynn and Holly. It's a match made in hell. The chemistry, pun intended, between Bryan Cranston and Dean Norris in these hypothetical scenes would be insane. They wouldn't be brothers-in-law anymore. They'd be two dying men trying to burn it all down before the fire consumes them. Now, let's sprinkle in some fascinating behind-the-scenes facts to ground this theory. You know the famous tread lightly scene? That was filmed in Bryan Cranston's actual garage during the pilot. Wait, no, that's a fan myth. It was actually a set, but the tension was real because the actors didn't know the ending yet. Vince Gilligan kept the scripts under such high security that even the cast was theorizing like us. If Gilligan had gone with the Hank Survives route, the production would have shifted from a manhunt vibe to a Western revenge vibe. The cinematography would have leaned even harder into those wide, lonely shots of the New Mexico desert, emphasizing that both Hank and Walt are now outlaws in their own way. But what about Jesse Pinkman? This is where the emotional stakes hit the ceiling. In the canon version, Walt saves Jesse at the very end as an act of final redemption. In our Survivor Hank timeline, Jesse is still in that hole, cooking the blue stuff for Todd. But Hank knows where the compound is. He remembered the GPS coordinates Walt screamed out. Hank and Walt plan a raid. This isn't a tactical DEA strike with sirens and SWAT teams. This is a two-man suicide mission. Imagine the what-if climax. Night falls over the Nazi compound. Hank, using his old surveillance skills, cuts the power. Walt, using his chemistry genius, creates a distraction. Maybe a more advanced version of the mercury fulminate from Season 1. They move through the shadows like twin reapers. Hank is taking out guards with the precision of a man who has nothing left to lose. He's not thinking about paperwork. He's thinking about Gomi. Then they find the lab. They find Jesse. The look on Jesse's face when he sees Hank and Walt together would be heart-shattering. He wouldn't know who to fear more. Hank sees the chains. He sees the photo of Brock. And in that moment, the rogue Hank mask slips. He realizes that while he was feeling sorry for himself, Jesse was living in a literal nightmare. This is the turning point for Hank's soul. He can choose to be a killer, or he can choose to be a protector one last time. But here comes the what-if twist that would break the internet. Jack Welker isn't a pushover. In the chaos, a firefight breaks out. It's epic in the truest sense of the word. We get the M60 machine gun in the trunk because, let's face it, that's too legendary to cut. But instead of Walt being hit by a stray bullet while shielding Jesse, it's Hank who takes the hit. Wait, why Hank? Because it completes his arc. In Ozymandias, he died for the law. In this version, he dies for mercy. He takes a bullet meant for Jesse. He goes out not as a disgruntled cop, but as a man who finally saw the human in the junkie. As he lies there on the floor of the meth lab, the same place he spent years trying to shut down, he looks at Walt. There's no anger left, only a profound, tragic realization of the waste of it all. You really were a genius, Walt, Hank might whisper, echoing his last words from the original, but with a different meaning. Too bad you were a prick. The fallout would be legendary. Walt survives the raid. He gets his money back. But he has to live with the fact that Hank died saving the kid Walt helped destroy. Marie never gets the closure of a funeral with honors. She gets a husband who died in a shootout at a meth lab, leaving the public to wonder if those confession tapes were true after all. The tragedy is doubled. The what if doesn't give us a happy ending. It gives us a more complex, bittersweet ending that fits the Breaking Bad DNA perfectly. Think about the Easter eggs we could have had in this alternate finale. Maybe we see a shot of the Schrader brow bottle one last time, rolling on the floor of the lab, empty and cracked. A symbol of the life Hank left behind. Or maybe, in the very last scene, we see Jesse driving away, not screaming in joy like in El Camino, but looking in the rearview mirror at the silhouettes of two men, one dead, one dying, who defined his life. The community discussion on this would be insane. Fans would argue for decades. Was Hank right to go rogue? Did Walt actually care about Hank in the end? This version of the story pushes the themes of ego and consequences to the absolute limit. It turns Breaking Bad into a story where no one gets away clean, not even the hero. And, let's be honest, the what-if scenario is a fun game to play because the writing of the show was so genius that every character felt like they had a million different paths they could have taken. Hank surviving doesn't fix the story. It just breaks it in a different, beautiful way. It reminds us why we fell in love with these characters in the first place. They weren't just archetypes. They were people capable of great good and terrifying evil. So, what do you think? Would you have preferred to see Dark Hank take his revenge? Or was his noble death in the desert the perfect end for his character? Does the idea of a Walt and Hank team-up get your adrenaline pumping? Or is it too crazy, even for Albuquerque. The beauty of this fandom is that the conversation never truly ends. Even years after the finale, we are still digging for hidden meanings in the sand. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the desert of what-ifs, I've got plenty more secrets and behind-the-scenes narratives ready to go. We could explore, what if Gus Fring won? Or what if Jesse never met Walt? The possibilities are as endless as Walt's ego.